Now let us talk about the elements of mysticism in the Aleph. Now, Louis Borges' short story, The Aleph, can not only be read as a literary exploration of infinity and perception, but also as a narrative of a mystical encounter, particularly within the framework of kabalistic symbolism and apophatic mysticism. Through the narrator's encounter with a point in space that contains all other points, Borges dramatizes the paradox of mystical vision, the limits of language, and the destabilizing effect of unmediated knowledge of totality. Now, Borges was also quite famous for being a skeptic. Borges, though, was famously skeptical of religion, he was profoundly fascinated by the elements of mysticism, paradox, metaphysical ideas, and of course, the various symbols that existed in Kabbalah. In the Aleph, he constructs a fictional framework that mirrors the structure of a mystical experience, one in which the boundaries of time, space, and subjectivity dissolve. There are popular beliefs that has also been proven to an extent, though scientifically, that we are not just isolated beings. We are the threads woven into the vast tapestry of existence. Just as every river flows into some kind of ocean, in the same way, every soul is a part of some divine oneness. Now, when the Aleph serves as the mysterious object, it serves and indicates this symbol of infinity and the fact that the Aleph in this light can also be understood as a modern literary embodiment of mystical vision, something which was influenced by traditions of Kabbalah, of Neoplatonism, and apophatic theology. Now let us try and see how the Aleph is a symbol of divine totality. The Aleph, as it is described in the story, is a point in space that contains all other points, something that echoes the mystical notion of one or the infinite divine presence. In Kabbalah, this is called Ein Sof, E-I-N-S-A-F. Now, like mystical symbols that exist in the very tradition of Kabbalah and other religions too, such as mandala, the monad, the name of God, Holy Spirit, etc., the Aleph compresses infinite diversity into a single, simultaneous, and paradoxical unity. Borges writes, in the Aleph, all the places of the world seen from every angle coexist. This vision, it resonates with mystical omniscience, a divine mode of perception in which all is seen in unity and simultaneity. In fact, the very letter Aleph is in Hebrew is silent and it signifies something which is ineffable. It is also the first letter of Elohim, that is, I am, that refers to the names of God, which links it to the unspeakable nature of the divine. Now, if one tries and look through the structure of mystical experience in the very narrative tapestry of the Aleph, one finds that Borges' narrator undergoes a kind of experience which is in itself very similar to those that has been described by mystics of various age and intellectuals of the various times. For example, Plotinus, Teresa of Avila, and then Eckhart, most of them have reflected upon this very experience of mysticism that they themselves have gone through. Now let us try and find this element in that is a mystical experience, the element of mystical experience in the narrative as well. First is the stage of preparation. We find preparation, that is when the narrator descends into a dark basement, symbolic of the catabasis or the descent into the inner self or the underworld. Then occurs a vision. He experiences a radical simultaneity of all phenomena, a collapse of time and space, something which mirrors a static mystical union, something where the subject finds himself totally, completely overwhelmed by the divine plenitude. And finally, there is this experience of incommunicability. That is, the narrator, when he says, quote unquote, what my eyes beheld was simultaneous, what I saw, what I shall now write is successive. So this, in a way, affirms a central tenet of mysticism, That is, the ineffability of the defined experience, where language totally fails, language completely becomes incompetent to represent the fullness of what was experienced or what was seen. And then finally, we have the elements of ambiguity, irony, and of course, the limits of the mystical insight. Unlike the traditional mystical texts, Borges embeds the experience in the words of irony and ambiguity. Why? The Aleph is housed not in some divine place. One can think of Mount Sinai, as mentioned by number of religious poets of the past age, not just one particular, but a number of them, where Mount Sinai became the very place where Moses was revealed the true tenets, the true covenants by the God. So, but here we find the Aleph is housed in the home of a mediocre poet, Carlos Argentino Daneri, an ironic counterpoint to the sublime nature of the vision. This juxtaposition reflects Borges' awareness of the very tension between the sacred and the profane. The narrator is clearly jealous. We find he's constantly doubting upon Carlos' abilities. He's skeptical. And of course, he's potentially unreliable, suggesting that even profound mystical experiences are subject to ego, doubt, misinterpretation, misrepresentation, and a complete disaster as well. Then Borges also questions whether true mystical vision brings wisdom or disorientation. The experience leaves the narrator disoriented and bitter and not enlightened or sublime at all. Rather, it's a reversal of traditional mystic tropes that literature has so typically used. Then we find Borges, in terms of the apophatic mysticism and the void, Borges' presentations of the Aleph, it resonates strongly with the apophatic mysticism, which emphasize knowing through unknowing and approaching the divine through negation and paradox. The narrator cannot fully grasp what he has seen, and he even doubts whether the Aleph was real or not. And what we find his language also makes an attempt to contain all of or what is essentially uncontainable, echoing that very apophatic insight that God or the infinite exceeds all names, forms, categories, divisions, etc. This confrontation with the ineffable positions, the Aleph alongside mystical texts like maybe the cloud of the unknowing, the Zohar, these are all part of the Kabbalistic and even certain Buddhist teachings on the emptiness and form. So finally, we find that Borges, can we see him as a modern mystic? In the Aleph, Borges offers a literary mysticism for the modern age. Stripped of all religious dogma, aware of the irony and fallibility, yet deeply attuned to the possibility of transcendence, we find the story becomes not just an exploration of the perception, but also the dramatization of what it means to see too much, to have some glimpse of the infinite, and to return disoriented, frazzled, unsure of the world that cannot contain it. So, from this lens, the Aleph is not merely more like a subject of speculative fiction, it is also a profound tale of spiritual exercise, spiritual excesses too, of too much of it, or some sort of epistemological rupture, as well as the enduring mystery of divine vision in a secular world. With this, we end this lecture and we'll move on to understanding more about the Aleph in the next one. Thank you.